Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me again today for another episode of Innerviews, where we hear the stories of the people behind the businesses. And today I'm super excited to be chatting with Vanya Mangaliso, who is the owner and founder of the fashion brand Sungoddess. And I used to do work for Vanya and the brand in between kind of 2000 and 2008. So I feel very, very excited to be connecting with her again today. Sun Goddess is a fashion brand in South Africa that has endured for many, many years, and I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from this interview. So, Vanya, if you'll tell us a little bit more about your business and why you started it.
Hi, Mel. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Sungoddess is a brand we started in the year 2000. And the idea for us was really, so we came from a different background. We came from an entrepreneurship background. And so we looked at fashion in a way that we saw fashion as a communicator, as this great vehicle for preserving our cultures. It was also, if you think of South Africa then, it was also a very beautiful time where it was the new South Africa. We were all trying to carve this new identity, what South Africa looks and feels like going forward. So it was a really exciting time, and we wanted to have a contribution to that. And I was naturally drawn to fashion because I loved fashion as a child. And also I also saw the potential economically with fashion, because fashion is one of those industries that is like, it's still the world's number 3 employer in the world. It employs many people. It's got that multiplier effect, as you know, like from working together, where you start off with the fabric, and somebody has to sew it, somebody has to cut it, so that's a skill. Somebody else has to sew it. It goes on and on. Now after it's sewn, as people who handcraft, then we take it to you. So you do something with it, you tie dye it, or at whatever stage where it gets crafted. I mean, there's different ways of doing it, but the point is there are so many people that can be impacted along the value chain. So it's just one of those exciting things that I was drawn to fashion for, like that it had that potential. And so I couldn't believe the markups. Another thing, aesthetically, also I had traveled a lot in the continent. I used to work for Transnet. And so so my clients were sitting in Europe, but what we were moving was within the continent. And I used to notice that whenever you landed in all these different countries, whether you were landing in Lagos or Congo or Kenya, you could clearly see that you were in Africa. It was very visible. It was clear, and you didn't get that when we were in South Africa. So that also aesthetically, financially, economically, said there is definitely a gap in the market. There's room to do something different. And then it was nice because there were also so many other people who were also feeling the same, who were doing the same, who wanted to be a part of that movement of South African creatives who were creating. Also, what was great about it was also we had the license to do things that were not done before, because we didn't have like a reference. Yes, we had other similar things that were happening at the time, but everything was so new. So it was kind of nice that we could experiment. We were young, we had the energy. It was great, and that's why we went into it. So fashion has really been a gift. It has really changed my life. And also for me, it was also about my identity, my healing. It was just amazing to get into it as a business. So we started in the year 2000. So if you think about it now, we will be celebrating 20 years in the
That's
business.
Amazing.
Which
That's
is
amazing.
Incredible. Really, really incredible to think of.
So many startups fail in our country. What do you kind of why do you think you survived when others failed?
Well, I just think like also thank you. And it's really an everyday struggle. It's once you think you are coasting, it's really when things start to go wrong. You gotta constantly be checking yourself. But one of the things that I think helped us was our approach was a bit different, because we didn't come from fashion school. So we had a business approach to it, right? And also my work experience had been in trade. And from Transnet, I had also gone into advertising. So when it comes, so we were able to do things that almost like for nothing. Like we could literally leverage advertising for nothing. We could get onto television every single day of the week by just knowing how to work it. So our experience was like, was varied. So we were very entrepreneurial in our focus. So, so for instance, like, I mean, I give, so like, for instance, I give an example. So so we worked with young designers, and the difference was, so you say to them, so make me, so if I want to make this blouse that has got long sleeves and this, how, I'm using 2 fabrics, how many meters do I need of this or that? And okay, so they're able to tell you that, and then they can also tell you how to do how to do 2 blouses like that. And now you start to say, so if I want 3 of them per size and I'm doing 5 different sizes, you can see that they get stuck. It's a hard calculation.
Okay.
And I think for me, what that means, what that boils down to is, these are things that they also, that we need to go back to design school and work on the curriculum, encourage them to be a bit more entrepreneurial. And also make people realize that fashion is really about selling. You are selling your ideas. You cannot go into fashion if you are not interested in people. Another thing, you have to be genuinely interested in, because you are providing solutions. And that's also another thing, that another way that we approached it. We saw ourselves as providing solutions. So meaning, it wasn't about our egos, the way we approached the business. It wasn't what we wanted. It was like listening. We understood that, being in a store, you've got free market research, right? So, because people tell you whether they're going to buy or not, they'll walk into your shop, and sometimes they'll walk in and they rubbish what you have, but then they say things sometimes that are valuable, even if they've got nothing to do with you. Or they'll be saying, oh no, this is a rubbish store. We'll go to so-and-so store because they were getting this and this. That's valuable information, emotions aside. So it was all those things where we saw ourselves like how an engineer will go and construct a bridge to provide a solution for people to cross. So that's what we were doing in fashion. We looked at the gaps, we looked at the South African aesthetic, and we realized that here was another aesthetic that was undervalued. Another thing that we also realized, what from a market point of view, people weren't wearing these clothes because also they couldn't access them. The only reason we saw these clothes a lot, because we would see them when we went to our families, like say in the Eastern Cape or the rural areas where people would gather and they would celebrate, and you'd be like, but this is beautiful. Like, I like this special wrap skirt. How come people don't wear it? Why is it like just a thing that Margaret is wearing it? Imagine this on a chiffon skirt. And so we realized that, but if you wanted the kind of item in Joburg, you would have had to go to, I don't know, to my. Do you know what I'm saying? Obviously, there were designers who were doing some of these things. Like, we're doing great things. You had, you had the Marian Fazas, you had the Sister Bags, people who were there, who were doing some of these things. So we wanted to be like, we wanted to bring this, like, to create a whole different market. And that's what we did. So we also realized access was important. So we had to put it in shopping malls. It had to be as easy as the way I was buying my Gucci's and my Chanel's, that, I would just be cruising in Sandton. So it shouldn't, fashion is about dreams. It's about fun. You got to make it easy. And also a lot of people who were doing South African fashion were making to order, which is, first of all, you can't make money. It's very hard to make money like that as a young designer if you're making to order. People change their minds. People don't, sometimes you don't even make your deadlines. I mean, we noticed, because when we started, our whole idea was we actually wanted to work with a lot of designers, sell their product for us, because we had a particular vision that we wanted to edit a collective of designers. Now, the whole thing was, then there were problems that we noticed. Because at design school, they don't always teach them the business side of it, which is where I started. So they would price. So their pricing was what they would price. Then they come to you and they say, okay, so I'm going to sell you this at this price. And then you're like, okay, go make me 10 of them. And then they come back and they deliver, and you've given them the deposit. Now you want to pay them the balance. So one of the things that happens is they look at the prices. So now they've spent a little bit more than they thought. So the costs were higher than they anticipated. Secondly, they've seen what you have marked it up as in your own store, which has got nothing to do with them. And suddenly they are wanting to changing the price on the delivery. You're like, listen, you cannot do that. You cannot change the price halfway in the deal. We can negotiate for the next time, and I could say yes or I could say no, but you can't just change it. So it was all those things that we picked up where we were able to, to find a gap, the availability. So one of the things, like we're saying, a lot of people are making to order. So people would get sick of just waiting. Fashion, it's also about spontaneity. So to have these things available was great. So we opened stores. So that was access. So we were able to build the brand in that way too, by the mere fact that the first time a lot of people came across like those African aesthetics was in our stores. And that stuck. And also, like I say, we were also very fortunate in the sense that South Africa was a very different time then. You could pick up the phone and call an editor in any magazine and be like, I've got this range, I'd like to show you. And they'd be like, oh yeah, sure. Like, yeah, bring it through. And they take pictures. Now it's a completely different, there's so much clutter, but also, I think people also in half the time they're also thinking, what's in it for me? It's a lot harder. It's not the way it was. So we were also very lucky. There were just things that conspired in favor for us to do this work. So so I would also say I would go back to saying that we do need to look at the education system in fashion. For too long, the creative industry has been left in the hands of the creatives only. It shouldn't be like that. It should be a joint partnership. People should be taught how to, before overseas, there are fashion schools where before you even go and study fashion, they want you to either have a degree or to have had some work experience. You must understand what you're going into. So the ideal fashion school of the future is the one that will take somebody who has been to a business, a fashion business, and they understand. Because I think a lot of people get into it thinking that they're going to sketch. It's about being creative, but that's really not it. It's about how can you convert that. Do you have a compelling right to exist, for starters? Does somebody want? Does somebody care? For me, like one of the things that also has helped me to understand what I'm trying to do. It's like half the time is, or maybe to help us steer us and stay on course, is trying to answer the question that if you were to stop doing what you're doing, who would care? Who would you impact? Who would be bothered by what you're doing? That you are not doing what you're doing, and those are the people that you're talking to, and therefore are you addressing the need? So to always think of it like that, like who are you serving? Who are you serving by existing? Are you serving yourself? You like, I don't buy my own clothes. I don't know how to make money to create it physically. So basically, I need somebody else for this thing to happen. So to be open-minded. And also we did business with our hearts. So we made a lot of mistakes, in the process. We learned, but today I never thought I would say thank God for every little thing that has happened in my life, good or bad. I never thought I would say that. 2 years ago, if you'd asked me, or even I would have been, what? But I'm like, I have learned so much about me. I've learned so much about the world. I have no clue how I would have learned the things that I've learned, if I hadn't gone through certain things. So it's been about that. And also one of the things that I do, I also sit on the advisory board of the TUT Fashion School, right? And this is where we are now trying to influence and change the curriculum, like we're saying, that where people mustn't be taught entrepreneurship at year 3 for like maybe 6 months. You are way into deep at that stage if you are going to be taught that this is what you need to do. You are selling. You are an entrepreneur once you're in fashion. You know what I mean? Even if you don't see yourself technically as somebody who's an entrepreneur, but you have to sell your ideas to somebody else. You have to do market research. You have to understand who needs this. How are people pricing it? And I know people think maybe pricing on the outside, it's something that is so tricky in South Africa. I mean, there used to be a section in one of the magazines that I think it was Drum or even True Love, where they would feature like a designer every month. It was called Ethnic Chic. And you would see like some lovely skirts, there's some nice things. I often use as an example, and you look at the price and it's like 150. It's like, no ways. So people are going to be calling you and asking for the skirt in blue, in pink, in yellow, and you're going to be charging 150. How are you going to sustain yourself? And that is what has typically happened, that people don't price things well. And then what happens ultimately, then they get disillusioned. They think people are out to exploit them. They get angry at the customer. There's often like this tug of war that I often see with like young people, emerging people in the industry. Just some of those things where you really see that mentorship does play a long way. You need to have sat next to somebody. For me, it has been one of the best ways to learn. You need to have sat to somebody doing it and watch them in action. The things that a textbook cannot teach you. Like it's like when some of my designer friends come to visit the store, I get excited because I know they're bringing experience. But just like somebody like JJ Skuman that I see quite a lot. I work closely with him. Walk into my store and but just like look, because he's been in the business for like close to 40 years. By just being in the store, he'll say one or two things, and then I learn something that there's no ways I could have found that in a textbook. And there's no ways you could have just said it anywhere else unless we were in that same space, that kind of thing. So it's all those things that I think are needed in our industry for that sharing of experience. Because what I also find is, which is why I'm happy about the TET, because at least now you've got different people, like, you've got a lot of people, like even Reese Man from Fashion District sits on the advisory board. So you've got different people contributing to the technical and say, this is what we are needing. This is what the industry is needing for it to move forward. This is what we are doing in the businesses practically, not airy-fairy. These are the solutions. And so now we're starting to influence and change the curriculum. And therefore, it means that solutions are not now are sitting in one space, in silos. Because this is what has typically happened in our industry, that you do something great in your corner, you're like, oh, wow, and you do it, you build it, but it serves just you. And somebody else is doing something great there, it serves them. And somebody else now also was going to start something great, and it serves just them. So we need to start sharing these solutions so we can also build on the gains and the industry moves forward. And I think it will happen, with something like COVID that has just shocked all of us. That has taught us also our interdependence, our interconnectedness, that my well-being is your well-being. I'm not going to be just okay if I'm just looking after me alone. I have to act, I have to do the right thing, even when no one is watching.
Absolutely. Those are some really valuable insights. Thank you. You've said a lot of stuff that I've been thinking for a lot of years. So that's awesome. So, Vanya, one of the challenges that I know that designers have when it comes to pricing is the pressure from the customer who has the expectation that clothing should be cheap because they can buy imports so cheap. How do you feel we can shift that culture?
So when we started, like I say, it was like we were literally creating a whole new market segment of these like ethnic luxury garments. And so one of the things that would happen is, so they would walk in the store, they'd be like, okay, but I can't be paying 300 for this skirt when I can get one at 200. So we had to be very, very patient, and I don't want to use the word educate, but literally we had to help them unlearn certain things and educate them by making them, we had to be patient and explain to them and say, okay, look, Truett's, where you bought that skirt, the reason they can afford to give you the price at 200 rands, it is because They went and ordered 5,000 skirts.
Mm.
So the fabric they bought was a lot cheaper than what I am buying, right? I only made 10 skirts. So my inputs are a lot more expensive. So for me, you are getting something that's exclusive. So there you are benefiting from economies of scale.
Mm.
But even more on a price point of view, but even better than that, I am giving you something that is almost exclusive.
Mm.
There are only 10 of you who will own this. And then once you would explain, I found that once you explain to people, people did understand.
Mm.
So we need to we need to make the fortify the weak. We need to empower the designer for them to be able to sell. It goes back to that whole thing of that you have to sell your product. You have to sell your services. You have to sell your craft. You have to sell your industry.
Mm.
Like, make them understand. You know, don't go rubbishing through it also, because that doesn't serve you. But make them understand, so they understand how, because they're shopping there anyway.
Mm.
Make them understand how everyone fits in.
Mm.
You know, obviously, like our industry and the whole fashion thing, it's still relatively new for us in South Africa. You've got people who are moving into these different income brackets all the time. You know, they want better aesthetically, they want, you know, they want more. They, you know, so they tend to demand, but at the same time, we need to arm ourselves with information. And this is where I think with COVID and the whole industry 4 thing, where now we are forced to become more intelligent as organizations. We're forced to gather information. We are forced to take a deeper interest in the client. Understand where your client is shopping. Okay, so your client comes to you once in 4 months to buy a dress to go to a wedding. What are they wearing in these other 3 months? Where are they shopping? What are they buying? What are they buying there in these shops? Why can't they buy that from you? What would it take for that switch? So now, how do you do all of that? It's you now being, you know, it's you now taking information from the physical world and looping it into the digital world. You're watching them on Instagram. You also have got that advantage where you can see what they're posting, what they're wearing. It's out there for you, this information. You just need to tap into it and start to build a narrative, build a story, build a story for your client's wardrobe. Go to them and say, listen, I've been watching that. This is what you're doing. This is what you're buying from me. You know, you obviously, it sounds very slow at the beginning and cumbersome, but it's really amazing. I find that even when we launched our fragrance, we had to go, even though we knew what we wanted, we had no doubt that it was going to be a great one. We still went and asked people, did market research. It's one of those things also that I think designers need to be really, really serious about. You need to do research. You need to go ask somebody. It's like even when we are doing our ranges, just generally in collections on the store, I cannot, it is a much better product if whatever that we are producing is based on somebody's lifestyle. I have to think of a particular client. I have to think of, so how do they live? So, okay, so this dress that I am making now, who do I see in this dress? Where are they going? They, you know, and once you think of it like that, have I seen them wear something similar? Is it one of those now that I have to now sell to them? Is it going to be that kind of a hard sell? Or it's like now we launched a new collection last week in our store because we haven't been trading. One of the most amazing thing and gratifying things, when one of my top clients came to fetch a suit we had made for her, and she walked in and she said, I'll try that, without us pointing it out to her on the mannequins. She said, you know, that was really amazing, because then we knew that we had gotten something right. That, you know, we didn't have to go in and say, try this. There are those moments where you have to, where you obviously can't move too far ahead of your clients. But there are moments where you're like, listen, come, be a little bit open-minded. Try this, trust me. And some, you know, and they try it and they love it, and sometimes, and then they buy it on the spot, and sometimes they love it, they're not sure. You're like, okay, cool, but we've got a photograph at least of you in it, so next time you at least know what it looks like. And chances are, you know, they'll come back and they'll be like, okay, you see that dress? Yeah, you know, the one that I tried. So but you have to know which dress it was. So a huge part of it is you have to be interested in what you're doing, and see yourself as providing a solution. and have information, and to simply answer the question you asked, how do you not succumb to the pressure of the client? Share information, see it as a partnership, see it as building relationships. It's like, for instance, it's like when I see even some of my clients, when they walk in and they're wearing something beautiful, something really beautiful that is South African, not from me, but from somebody else, I usually joke and say to them, that is so beautiful, and I hope you paid a lot of money for it, because it looks very expensive. And then sometimes they go, yeah, I did. Sometimes they go, no. I'm like, I hope so. I hope that designer who made it for you, you pay them a lot of money, because it looks very expensive. So I'm always trying also to help the next designer. And even when like a client comes to me and maybe they say, obviously I don't want to be in the business of make me. Like, one of the funniest things Clive Randall once said says, do you think I'm going to sit there and make clothes for people? No. I would rather I make and they come and buy. And I didn't get it in the beginning, but now you obviously learn with experience that it is much better if you want to grow and have your time. You do it like that. So, but I mean, sometimes they will come in and they'll say, make me this, or maybe it's a bride. And then you sit there, you spend hours, and then you don't agree on whatever reason, they decide not to do it with you. But I always make sure that I say, okay, even when you go to the next person, let me explain what you should be aware of, so that you're saving them in time, just to make sure that, this information spreads and you can help somebody else too who wants to do the same thing. This is how it works. So you want the skirt, this skirt is in the shop in red. You want it in blue, right? So meaning I have to stop what I'm doing, because now in the skirt is 500. They also want you to make it for them in 500, but in blue. So you're like, listen, I must now drop what I'm doing, get into a car. This is what it will take. But obviously you find nice ways of saying it, but it has to be said. Get into a car, use petrol, go somewhere, go find this blue fabric for you. And because I am only buying 2.5 meters for your skirt, so I will pay a normal price. Not like they'll give me a discount. Unlike when I made these red ones. When I bought these red ones, guess what? I didn't even have to get into the car to get this fabric, because I knew what I wanted. I just said, deliver me this fabric, right? It was a different proposition. And the price I negotiated, I was making 10 skirts. I was buying a lot of meters. So it's different. So now, and then my cottons were there. And also I was making red, because I already had red buttons and red cottons. So now you want it in blue. So I'm going to have to go get the blue fabric, the blue cotton in a different shop. I have to go find the blue buttons. Do you see this trimming? I have to go now find the trimming. The person that put the beads finished with this lot and they're off now. So, but I have to get them to come and do it for you. Do you see why you cannot get it now at 500 rands like the one that's in the shop? So but maybe they weren't looking to pay double if that's what you want, and that's understandable. But at least they now have an appreciation of what it takes, and you have helped the next person, because they'll go and exploit somebody else and maybe not exploit, but they will find somebody who is okay to do that deal. Maybe they were doing nothing. That's how it works. It somebody else will benefit as long as you try to do good and pay it forward where you can by by doing the best you can where you can.
I love the way you pay it forward, and the way you gently grow others in your culture. It's beautiful. So what's been the biggest challenges in your business over the last 20 years?
Wow. Let's see. Wow, there has been quite a few. I mean, there's I just think for one, you're talking experience. For us, it was really growth. I think growth for us was a little bit challenging in the sense that, so you know what they say, your first shop is usually great, your second one is great, your third one is great. It's usually that fourth one and that fifth one that just, So with us, it was, it was the same thing where, in the end, we just didn't have the systems to manage businesses that were in 3 different provinces and 5 different cities. It became quite a bit of a challenge that I felt like I was losing control. And I thought, you know what, sometimes it's better to go for like we were not Woolworths. We didn't have the systems. We didn't have the you know the I suppose the experience. You know, like one of the shocking things that you soon understand is that 80% of the security budget for Woolworths is spent internally. So that tells you how you need to worry about internal controls. Like I say, literally, we didn't have those solutions. You're 1,000 kilometers away. You're sitting in Joburg. Your other shop is in Cape Town. It's a public holiday. She knows that there's no ways you can get there to Cape Town in less than 5 hours. So it's a different proposition. And so so for us, that was one of like the biggest things that we thought, you know what, we would rather go for the quality of the profit margin. It's okay, you can have all these stores and you have your revenues coming from here and there, but it's taxing so much that it is better to narrow it down. And it's one of the things that we did. And also came 2000 and like that post 2008 period where there was like just this economic meltdown in the world. And as a small family-owned business that didn't have large resources, we were suddenly like shocked. We just couldn't take, the pressure. So for us, that was also one of the most challenging things. And another thing also was the skill in South Africa when it comes to the technical skill of sewing. It was literally like you are a restaurant owner who is cleaning the kitchen, but you're still serving a shift. There are people, you know what I'm saying, where you are having to build, you're having to come up with the solutions as you go along. It's not like you running this Kentucky franchise where you can literally call head office and be like, what do we do again when this happens? Like, you are having to find your solutions. But having said that, I mean, it has been an amazing and a rewarding period and a great life. It was in those moments where I learned the most amazing things about myself, like, like how having to dig deep and come up with solutions. And also, just as human beings having fun, also thinking, okay, so if I wasn't doing this, where would I be? Where would my life be? I'm here in the trenches, I'm doing it, I am living, So we've had to go through those ups and downs. From also we're people who do business with our hearts, so we got into a lot of trouble. Where you would not always follow procedure, you end up at the bargaining council so many times. I mean, we've been there. You name it, we've been there. I often look around and be like, yes, I watch people going to hit the wall, and I'm thinking, I've been there. If only there was a way this information could come to you from me. But it's not always easy. But because we live in this world of silos where things are happening. So it's great that people like you are having these platforms where people can share information, because it's really also in vain if you don't. I think you share, you pass on, because as people who were there on the forefront of certain things, I mean, we learned some things, we saw some things, we came out of some things, and that's a part of who we are. We wear those scars with pride, and we could save, whatever it is that you want to learn. That's one of the things that have helped me growing up, was realizing that whatever it is that I want to learn, there is chances that there is somebody else out there who has tried to do it. Whether they've succeeded or not, I will learn something from them. And you find them and you use them as your teachers. And the fact that you don't always have to learn from your own mistakes.
So you would recommend that young up-and-coming designers find themselves more mentors?
It is really, I think for me, it's really the only way I have seen it work. Because I've seen the brightest of them. I mean, they come out of college. Very few. Okay, you've got those few ones who will come out and get in the industry and know what to do. They would have succeeded anyway. Then there are those who need a little bit of help. And also another thing also, that for me is important is the fact that when we started, we didn't have like a government loan, we didn't have a grant, we didn't have a bank loan. It was literally us selling a skirt and getting the money, buying more fabric, and even opening our first shop. We didn't have, you know. So we had what was called a customer, which is the most important thing, and people forget that at the end of the day, as a business, please have a customer. There must be somebody who wants what you have to offer. It's not about just making beautiful clothes or I think as far
Absolutely.
as I see it, this is the way we have done it. Maybe there are other ways of doing it. Obviously there are other ways of doing it, but once you need a customer, and I find that a lot of people are on government, I say they're like on life support. Before you even know whether your own lungs can breathe, you're already on life support. Like you don't see the potential of the business, and it has distorted the industry. People think that this fashion business is a business of poverty, and it's not. It's really a great business. I could show you the certificates from old mutual properties where we spent a lot of time, where we were hitting the turnover clause like it's going out of fashion, for like selling, for hitting the numbers, meaning that South Africans do want to support. There are, because that's another thing that we need. We also need the public to buy in. We need the public to move with us. People get scared of, like I often say, like, people will, and also people look at the fashion industry and they think, oh no, like people in fashion are sleeping. There's so many opportunities. Yes, there are, but it's not as easy as it looks. And they will get designers, they'll go get government money and get designers, and they say, yeah, come to the whatever festival, and the customers, there's lots of people, 6,000 people, and it's like, okay, realistically, have you bought a 2,000 dress on the side of the road lately? Would you buy it? Do you know what I'm saying? People will have unrealistic expectations, and the whole thing is, it doesn't mean just because people are at a wine festival they're not your potential customers. They are your potential. So you can't take your 4,000 dresses there to sell, because what if the zip breaks? First thing I would think is, what if the zip breaks? Where am I going to find this young designer? But I could buy earrings. I could buy a belt. I could buy a hat. I could buy an accessory, and I could give them my phone number, the young designer, and say, okay, you can phone me, and we can chat after this. Show me where your studio is, or wherever, or where we can meet, or your website, so I can, you build a relationship. So you do need people. People must also be realistic about what they're doing. We need more people to specialize in the industry. We need more specialists. This is not the message that needs to filter. Like that's how they did it in Italy, where, like, if you're making leather, you have to be stationed in a particular town, because that's where the leather comes from. So things are easy. Your costs are cheaper, because now you don't have transport, because you're sitting right there with the leather people, and also things are happening that much quicker. You are communicating with them. They are telling you what they need. You are telling them what you need, and they're providing you with it. So, like in our industry, another thing, you ask about the challenges. One of the things that we have is the supply of fabrics, which, if you remember, which was how we were so excited to have your service, because now as designers, we could now do different things. We could manipulate the fabric, as opposed to us buying the same things. There is no platform where the people that are bringing in the fabrics into the country and the people that are making the fabrics are talking. They bring in, they're using whatever system that they're bringing, using to bring the fabrics, and we are having to accept what we have. So now we could take those. So everyone, you can have everyone with cream raw silk on the ramp, So now we had the opportunity now to come and say, do this. And then also with your sister, when we're doing the block printing, I mean, it was just amazing, those crafts. And also, it's also our unique contribution to the world as South African, that we our labor costs are still a lot cheaper than when you compare to the rest of the world. So we've got a lot of labor, so we can do things in fashion that other people cannot. You know, it's like when I have some of my Japanese clients, you'd be like, oh no, it's a little long. So they're like, oh no, I'm catching a flight. I can't have it altered. You're like, take it to someone when you get home and get them to hem it. And they look at you, they're like, no, there are no such people in Japan. There's
Wow.
like in the big cities, like, yes, there's no space. You're not going to have a seamstress sitting there waiting to alter things. Space is prime. So here we are in South Africa, like you saying, you've now moved to a small town. I can imagine there's just land and spaces where you can just imagine you could have women doing beautiful things with fabrics. We've got those things in South Africa that we can do. We've got those opportunities. Yes, our industry is at like infancy compared to now, Italy and all these places where things are so specialized. There are certain towns where you get to, and all they do is cashmere. And all they do is they work with like South African mohair. Another problem that we have in our country with it's we really need also government support in terms of legislation. And I think they're trying, but I suppose we need to make sure as players that we're getting in there, we're getting a seat at the table. Like the way our mohair leaves South Africa raw, it goes to some other parts in Europe, it gets treated, and we have to buy it back, and we're paying tariffs that are so high. Like, why isn't there like a strong drive to make sure that also even South Africans, the consumer, the public, they are much more aware. It's also another thing that I think I lament, that I think, yes, we need a bigger drive to get the South African public to be more supportive, to be more deliberate, to choose South African products over others. So we can so they will take pride in their mohair. They will go and look for mohair products. They will demand them, and then and maybe they can also set off the chain now, where government will start saying, no, let's keep some of these products, our raw materials, let's develop them here. Let us be the ones who are taking them to the global market, not via. Because we buy them as finished products. I mean, you see a lot. We went to BL, I think 2 years ago. Beautiful little town in Italy where they do mohair, they do cashmere, they do silk, and we found some South African mohair, and we said, oh my God, this is great. But it didn't come directly from South Africa. They bought it in Germany, and we wanted it. So now, when coming back home, we're talking to them about this mohair, and it's becoming quite clear that the tariff is quite something else. Like, why should we, when it originated in South Africa? So it's all those things that we need to be aware of, we need to fix. And I think when you think of COVID, it's coming to fix those things, like in a way, directly and indirectly. The fashion industry needs to check itself. We really need to check itself from the waste stage that we turn out every year. I mean, I love what you're doing with upcycling. It's one of the things. I run a heritage entrepreneurship program with designers. Like, one of the things that I often tell them, I use you as an example for, especially when it comes to denim. You know what a polluted denim is. And we've got so much denim in the world. I'm like, nobody should be producing any more denim in the world. We must take the existing denim and upcycle it, anything it, tear it apart. But there's just enough denim in the world. So it's all those things that we need to be looking at, trying to support local goods. The fact that, you had the lockdown and things could not come into the country. It was also a good thing in a way, that it made us think. Now we had to look internally. Why were these things coming from outside anyway? How do we strike that balance? And then you've got, with all the global events that seem unrelated. For instance, you think of the Black Lives Matters movement, how now retailers like Sephora are dedicating like 15% of the shelf space to those kind of communities who otherwise didn't have access. So we are all learning from these things. These are solutions that we can also come and propose in our own chain stores and be like, actually, guys, let's not wait for a crisis. Let's just, learn from these guys. So how about we make sure that the other day I walked into Pick and Pay, and I noticed that they have their own proudly South African logo where they buy things locally. But it was like a little cutout thing there, and I thought, but I didn't know this. And the only reason, it's because I went to Pick and Pay that does that also has clothing. I was out of town, and I thought, so you've got these South African retailers, they want to do the right thing. but it's not happening fast enough.
Mm.
And also when they do it, they're not good at communicating.
Mm.
You know, there's also one of the biggest problems that people don't know, because I came from that background of advertising. For me, it was one of those things that if nobody knows that you have a business, then your business doesn't exist.
Mm. Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
If it doesn't, if you're not doing it, if you're not talking about it,
Mm.
and people don't know about it, you know, but also it's a bit arrogant of you to just have it out there and not tell people that,
Mm.
listen, guys, let me get your buy-in. This is what I'm doing. You know, walk this journey with me. So things are happening slowly, but I think we can go out there and maximize them. And I look forward to a much more organized industry. I know we had the councils, and I know that they you know, the South African Fashion Council was dissolved because it was sitting in the wrong place. And even with the Gauteng Fashion Council, which I'm a part of, for many years, government was trying to set it up. And it also took us a long time to realize that it's a huge mistake to wait for government to set it up. It's just never going to take off, because you've got different, you know, you've got some people are trying to do the right thing, but unfortunately they don't know enough. Then they move positions, and then, you know, so we have decided now that we are going to run it as an independent entity, and we will go and try and have these partnerships with government as and when they come up with different programs. So we are starting now, and hopefully we can now go and talk to Pick n Pay and say, Pick n Pay, so we see that you are using like locally produced cotton, like also they had shirts that were produced in Madagascar, which is great. It's so nice to know that things are coming from locally. They're not always coming from China, but people need to be made aware of this. One of the projects we worked on was the Orange project with Edcon. And when they launched it in KZN, you know, we flew down with the CEO to Selrose. They have a factory outside Durban. We walked in there, and there were like 4,000 people under one roof sewing in South Africa. What a beautiful sight. Things that we didn't think still happened in South Africa. You know, we thought, no ways, everything, you know. So we need also to have a lot of that communication. We need to show people. We need that buy-in, even for the public. Like the idea, and the CEO of that factory was wearing shoes, leather shoes that were made at Adcon, were being sold right there. It was interesting, like, wow. You know, people don't think that we are still producing. We're still producing on a huge scale. And like I say, our industry is a great one. It just needs now to be a little bit more inclusive. It needs to be a bit more integrated. We need to think of, like, you know, you think of the people in the rural areas who've got the time, the land. They just need to be, and mostly they've got skill. They just need to be enhanced. They also need to be connected to the market. They must sit right there where they are, and they can, you know, they can start to create this variety of things that we need. Crafting fabrics, doing 20 meters here. You know how you used to do fast. Let me give you 20 meters to spike up your range. You know, here of this, let me do this. So those are the kinds of things we need, almost like a cottage. We need to go back to some of those old traditions that worked, things that are unique. I am lucky now, I'm working on a project that is on the provinces, where, you know, we find crafters and we say to them, listen, think of things that are unique to your province. Think of the trees that don't grow anywhere else but in your province. Let that filter through in your work. I must be sitting in Joburg and I must be wanting to buy this pencil case because it comes from Kimberley. It's got the big hole. There is no designer sitting in Joburg who's going to be designing a pencil case with a big hole. Where have they seen it? They don't know that. So you start to create you carve your own unique signature in the world. You start to build a narrative that is yours alone. You go to Limpopo. Beautiful heritage that we found there. Like, I discovered that the people in Limpopo, like way back, were trading with Egyptians. They had like direct roots with Egyptians. They were trading on their own. You know, all those things. That's also, they're quite known for diplomacy. Like, they're one South African tribe that is very diplomatic. They're called Babedi because they're different tribes that came together. They were able to live together. So, wow, there's something we can learn. So it's all these things that, you know, you go to the Eastern Cape, you're finding a museum that was set up by a you know, like just the most amazing things that we haven't even begun to tap into. It's really, really a rich country. You know, once you go beyond that, okay, this is a Xhosa design, a Sotho design. Now you get into those places, the unique beauty of our country. Like you think of Hole in the Wall in the Eastern Cape. The fact that the Eastern Cape has the Big Seven, how many people are aware of that? That must filter through in the creativity. You know, in the creative work. So it's all these things that we're trying to help our young designers with. Like, you know, have a signature for yourself. Tell your story. Every little bit counts. Things that make you, things that you take for granted. But this is the things that make you. And as long as you are not being authentic, you will miss the mark. You know, specialize, look around you. You know, you know, there are things you're living up. There are rivers around you that nobody else has access to. The names of those rivers. Let them filter through in your bags or whatever, your jewelry, anything. Because nobody else is going to have those unique things. We must all be intrigued. And especially now, if we were not to be able to leave our towns, but we still wanted to look good because life is to continue, if we were to find ourselves in a situation where we can't travel, we can't leave Joburg, but we need to look beautiful, we need to look fabulous, I must have a reason for buying something that is made in Cape Town. Because it's uniquely Cape Town. Nobody else is making it. The Cape Town designer is celebrating a culture that is not anywhere else in the country. They're talking about things that I don't know anything about. It's like, oh, really? Yeah, this is how we live and this is what we do. You know, and that's how now we can make the trade flow. You know, I might have a hat already, but yeah, if I see a nice hat from, I don't know, from Kimberley or KwaZulu Natal, you know, I might not be needing a hat, but I'll buy one. And even and it filters to everything, the music, the food. We drove to the Eastern Cape the one day, and the only thing we could buy along the way was a chutney that what was different, was just made by somebody called Rosalie. That was the only thing on all those cafes. Obviously, we weren't going into the towns, but it was like such a missed opportunity. And I was reminded that, you know, like when we were growing up, you had those farm stalls, you had those bud stalls all along the way. Those things, that need still exists. You've got so many people that come to South Africa, they won't go into the malls. They will, you know, they will land in Joburg and they will maybe fly into Sun City or hire a car and drive into the Eastern Cape. But along the way, they need to be shopping. They need to be buying things. Where are the farm stalls? You know, those bud stalls. You know, where are the where you can buy a beautiful scarf right next to a jam. You know, that's locally made.
And a lot of those farm stalls that you go into these days, you can buy a scarf, but it'll be a Chinese import. You know, so
it's really sad. We came across a beautiful one in the Free State. It's called Deepak Style. So this lady, she uses her Dutch heritage and her South African heritage. So everything either has a windmill or a cow, a nguni cow.
Oh, lovely.
Is really beautiful. It's in everything. It's in the teacups. It's in the plates. In the bells. I mean, I even bought a bell. I was reminded growing up that, you know, my grandmother used to ring a bell for dinner. So, you know, so she's got a signature. There's a narrative. You walk in and literally you can buy a jam next to a tray, a wooden tray that has got this cow, this nguni cow, or a windmill. So it's just really beautiful. That and this is what one of the examples that, you know, I try and use, and I bought quite a few of those to show the designers that this is what we're talking about. That you know, when you say celebrate something unique, you know, be authentic, tell your story as it is.
Vanya, I noticed that we're running out of time. I can listen to you all day. You've shared such amazing gems of valuable knowledge for young designers out there. I'm quite certain that anybody who watches this video is going to learn a lot from you. So thank you for your generous sharing today. I appreciate it so very much. So just in parting, What do you love
Mm.
about what you do the most?
You know what I love the most? I just love how with fashion, you can take like a piece of fabric and you transform it into these amazing things. One of the things that I love doing is literally standing above the machines and I'm watching them coming, like items coming off the machines. It is really, really fascinating. For me, it's that transformation.
Mm,
How and also how fashion is just this communicator where you can say so many things without saying a word.
mm,
I genuinely love fashion. I'm the kind of girl who goes weak in the knees when I see something that I love. Like
mm.
it's
And you
it's
always
it's
look
it's
so
fabulous.
fabulous.
Thank you, ma. I
So,
remember when I was younger, I walked into Galeries Lafayette in Paris. I could not believe that every single thing I had ever imagined and not imagined as a child was right here. And I was just like, I wanted to faint.
that's wonderful.
So much I love
So,
fashion.
if anybody would like to get in touch with you or find your clothing, where can we find you online?
So thank you, Mal. You can find us. Our store is we've reopened in Nelson Mandela Square.
Mm.
Post lockdown, we're there, and you can find us on Facebook. It's Sungoddess Heritage. We're on Instagram, Sungoddess Afrolux for Sungoddess African Luxury. Otherwise, you can also send me an email if you're interested in joining some of our internship programs. You can send me an email, vanya@sungoddessonline.co.za. I am, I try and I respond at least within 24 hours, but it's
Okay.
just a bit of patience. Follow us on Twitter also, Sungoddess, at sungoddess_2. Yes, we look forward to a better and a newer South Africa where we're doing more fun things, running more intelligent organizations.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute privilege talking to you today.
Thank you so much, Mal, for actually giving structure to my beautiful day. So now I feel like I've done something good on my Heritage Day. Thank you for being so hardworking
You did
and for
something
the
amazing.
amazing work you do.
Thank you.